She didn't keep the marriage, but she kept the name. Here's why that's not as crazy as it sounds. Apparently, Scheana Shay's ex-husband, Mike Shay, has voiced his discomfort over the fact that Scheana still uses his last name. Tamra Judge helpfully relayed this detail during a podcast appearance, revealing that Mike allegedly asked Scheana to drop Shay because she's now remarried and has a child. A reasonable request? Perhaps. But also, good luck with that. Let's not forget, Scheana didn't endure a crop-top wedding, a soul-sucking marriage, and a financial drain just to give up the only thing she walked away with, the name. That surname was her consolation prize, and she's clinging to it like it's a SAG card in a writer's strike. One might wonder if she's aware that you don't have to legally marry someone to change your name. Spoiler, she is. Scheana is legally Scheana Davies now. Shay is merely the stage name, her professional moniker, but it seems even Mike isn't clear on that distinction, which adds another layer of irony to the entire charade. If the stage name is the only thing anchoring her to that era, a simple spelling tweak, perhaps Shay or Shay, could solve the problem. But then again, why bother? Mike reportedly drained her emotionally and financially. Why should she expend an ounce of energy making him more comfortable with her branding? If there's poetic justice in reality TV, it's keeping your ex's name and getting paid to do it. And yet, the whole discussion opens a broader question. Why do women keep their ex-husbands' last names, especially when there are no children involved? For many, it boils down to pure logistics. The paperwork, the appointments, the endless forms, it's a bureaucratic slog. Some women simply refuse to deal with it, whether out of convenience, emotional exhaustion, or the sheer absurdity of trading one man's name for another's, as if either option holds great sentimental value. The traditional expectation that women legally shed their identity for matrimony remains baffling, particularly in cultures where this isn't the norm. And when divorce enters the scene, the idea of reattaching yourself to a former name, possibly your father's, possibly someone else you'd rather not honor, feels less like closure and more like swapping one set of shackles for another. As for Scheana, her string of surnames could rival the credits of a mid-budget rom-com. Jankin, Parks, Valletta, Shay, Davies. Each a chapter, each with its own dramatic arc. And yet it's Shay that endures. Not out of love, not out of nostalgia, but likely because it's familiar, it's branded, and, most importantly, it's hers now. Mike Shay may want his name back, but unfortunately for him, that's the one part of the relationship Scheana actually found useful. Stassi got canceled and came back stronger. Scheana stayed loyal and tanked her own relevance. Let's talk about that. It's poetic, really, poetic. As Stassi Schroeder takes center stage as host of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives reunion, yes, that sentence is real. The only sound louder than the Bravo cameras might be the grinding of Scheana Shay's teeth, or perhaps the dull thud of her metaphorical ankle giving out under the weight of yet another missed opportunity. Let's be honest, watching Stassi and Ariana thrive while Lala Kent migrates to the valley is almost Shakespearean in its symmetry. And then there's Scheana, Bravo's perennial sidekick, watching it all unfold from her podcast studio. Or is it her Instagram story? Or her latest sponsored wellness post? It's hard to keep up. The irony, of course, is rich, especially for someone who was technically there from day one, only to end up as a recurring cautionary tale in the background of other people's highlight reels. Scheana's fall from relevance isn't some grand mystery. There's no villain behind the curtain, no one else to blame, just Scheana, steadily chipping away at her own credibility. One self-serving decision, awkward name drop, and off-key, good-as-gold performance at a time. A woman who never met a red flag she couldn't befriend, or house. Which brings us to the strangest subplot yet. Her new best friend, Marciano. A man she's not dating but allows to live with her, accompany her to her daughter's school events, and generally fill the Brock-shaped space when he's conveniently out of town. She has proudly detailed this arrangement on her podcast as if it were a relatable roommate situation rather than a plot twist from a Bravo fever dream. One could argue Scheana and Sandoval are the only Vanderpump Rules originals still floating near the wreckage. But instead of adapting, evolving, or at least pretending to grow, they've both dug in their heels, Scheana in particular, clinging to the kind of performative loyalty and outdated guys-girl persona that simply doesn't play anymore, not with an audience that's long since shifted its loyalty to women who've learned from their mistakes and built brands with actual direction. Enter Stassi, once canceled, now quietly conquering. Like it or not, she's made meaningful steps toward rehabilitation, choosing her associations wisely and distancing herself from the Bravo toxicity she once swam in like a shark in stilettos. She's not everyone's favorite, but she's earned her second act. And crucially, she didn't get there by inserting herself into every storyline or offering friendship to the highest-profile male in the room. Meanwhile, Scheana keeps aiming low. Career decisions that baffle, hosting ambitions that border on delusional. One can only imagine what a reunion hosted by her might look like. Chaotic side-taking, shameless plugs, and perhaps a monologue about the time she brushed shoulders with someone who once stood near Rihanna. Growth, it seems, is optional in her playbook. And yet, for all her missteps, it's worth asking, why does she always end up the punchline? Why is Scheana the yardstick we break out whenever another cast member gets their moment? At some point, it begins to resemble bullying more than criticism, a national pastime of kicking the girl who's already down, and maybe tweeting about it after. Yes, she invites it. But yes, it's also tired. They're all pushing 40 now. They've had the kind of career longevity most reality stars only dream of. There should be room at the table for all of them, if only some could stop tripping over their own insecurities on the way there. Until then, we'll keep watching Scheana play supporting actress in her own life, wondering how on earth someone can be this close to fame for this long and still be so fundamentally unprepared for it. Lisa Vanderpump isn't the queen. She's the bully in designer heels, and it's time someone said it. There's a certain irony in watching Lisa Vanderpump smugly lob condescending one-liners in her confessionals, only to unravel the moment someone dares return the favor. For a woman who's made a career of arching an eyebrow and casually dismantling others with a glittering insult, her paper-thin tolerance for critique is almost impressive. The moment a cast member challenges her, suddenly it's slander. And heaven forbid anyone question her restaurants, those glitter-coated monuments to mediocrity. Take, for example, her comment about something about her. Not something I would call my restaurant. Cute. And yet, let's remember, she christened a business Sexy Unique Restaurant. The acronym alone reads like a punchline. But apparently, she believes she's the branding authority. That snide dismissal of SAH is especially rich, considering it's garnered rave reviews for everything from food quality to ambiance, a rare feat among Vanderpump's empire of tepid concepts and rhinestone stud, dead decor. Villa Blanca and Pump have already shuttered. Sur survives on nostalgia and cable airtime. Tom Tom? A miracle it's still open. And while her Vegas spot Pinkies might photograph well, the culinary consensus remains underwhelming. But back to Lisa herself, because the restaurants, like the rosé, are just the garnish. Lisa's persona operates on a calculated duality. She's the posh matriarch who cares as long as the cameras are rolling. She cloaks her barbed comments in polished charm, rarely descending into overt malice, which gives her an air of poise, or at least plausible deniability. But watch closely and the veneer cracks. A standout moment came when Tom Schwartz attempted a polite hello during a sandwich tasting at SAH. Lisa, mid-phone call, barely acknowledged him. Not a glance, not a wave, nothing. It was a fleeting moment, but it laid bare the truth. Off camera, there's no performance. There's just indifference. Then there was the unforgettable showdown at Britney and Jax's engagement party. Ariana confronts Lisa about her condescension toward the Toms. A bold move, considering Lisa was visibly swaying and one misplaced blink away from calling it a night. Still, Ariana held her ground, and for a moment, the dynamic shifted. Lisa, uncharacteristically rattled, stepped into Ariana's space, whether intentionally or in a drunken daze, and suddenly, it was less a party and more a case study in power dynamics. The moment Ariana shifted to discussing her depression, Lisa recalibrated too, instantly softening. It was a fascinating psychological dance. Two women vying for control, only to briefly recognize each other's humanity. But even that fleeting vulnerability doesn't erase the larger issue. Lisa is a textbook bully in pearls. She demands standards of others she doesn't apply to herself. She defends men's mistakes with excuses and finger waves, while holding the women around her to account with a scolding sense of superiority. Her loyalties are performative, her critiques selective, and her status as above reproach is exhausting. So yes, she's witty. Yes, she rarely lets her mask slip into full villainy. And yes, there's a certain charm in her ability to dress down a cast member with a smile. But let's not confuse composure with character. Strip away the reality show gloss and the pink cocktails, and what remains is a woman who thrives on control, shirks accountability, and treats empathy as a prop. She can dish it. Oh, can she? But the second someone serves it back, she's suddenly lost her appetite. Scheana Shay isn't misunderstood. She's a masterclass in how to be painfully insufferable for 10 straight seasons. By season 10 of Vanderpump Rules, one thing becomes painfully clear. Scheana Shay has perfected the art of being wrong, not just occasionally mistaken. No, that would suggest she operates within the realm of human fallibility. Scheana is chronically, exhaustingly, and almost mystically wrong. About people, about situations, about her own self-awareness. If being off base were a competitive sport, she'd be hoisting a trophy every season. There's a special kind of irony in watching someone so relentlessly desperate to be liked that she's rendered completely unlikable. Her primary personality trait is an overwhelming need for approval, which she attempts to earn by shape-shifting into whatever flavor of friend, girlfriend, or ally she believes will win her the most applause or airtime. The result? A hollow echo of authenticity. And when you've spent your life playing dress-up in other people's personalities, it's hardly a surprise that your radar for sincerity in others malfunctions. Scheana's misguided instincts aren't just embarrassing, they're destructive. Her track record of inserting herself into dynamics where she doesn't belong is both baffling and maddening. Her ill-fated mission to push Raquel onto Schwartz is a textbook example of her inability to read a room or care who gets trampled in the process. It wasn't matchmaking, it was opportunistic meddling dressed up as concern, fueled by some half-baked interpretation of something Katie may or may not have said. The damage didn't matter, the exposure did. And exposure, after all, is Scheana's drug of choice. Her podcast serves as a weekly reminder that she's less interested in conversation and more obsessed with performance. She doesn't listen to connect. She listens for her next opportunity to pivot the spotlight back onto herself. Guest shares heartfelt story? Scheana counters with trauma tourism anecdotes from yesteryear. Emotional resonance be damned, as long as she remains the main character. Then there's the pick-me energy that could power a small country. Scheana has long treated other women as obstacles, not allies. She's a self-serving competitor under the guise of friendship, quick to betray, deflect, and sabotage if it means another second on screen. Her decision to weaponize Raquel against Katie was not only juvenile, it was cruel. Schwartz's love life wasn't hers to manipulate, but since when has Scheana let ethics get in the way of camera time? Her past with Shay offered a glimpse of her real priorities, publicly championing his recovery while privately confessing she was thinking of Rob during their wedding day. How poetic. When the lie is more flattering than the truth, Scheana opts for the former without hesitation. Of course, she isn't some master manipulator working behind the scenes. Her brand of chaos is messier, needier, and doused in insecurity. She's not plotting, she's grasping. But that doesn't make her less harmful. Intentions aside, her actions leave collateral damage season after season. Scheana isn't misunderstood. She's not secretly brilliant. And no, she's not good TV just because she keeps betraying her so-called friends. She's a one-woman cautionary tale about the cost of chronic inauthenticity and manufactured friendships. The saddest part? After a decade of calling half the cast her best friend, she seems to have ended up with none. End scene. Lala went topless, and the moral panic that followed says far more about everyone else than it ever did about her. There's nothing revolutionary about a woman choosing to go topless at a beach, nor is there anything scandalous, at least not inherently. Breasts, after all, are not weapons of mass destruction. And yet, when Lala Kent peels off her bikini top in front of a group, the pearl clutching begins. Suddenly, the issue isn't nudity, it's etiquette, it's morality, it's feminism, it's someone's boyfriend, it's Katie's feelings. One could be forgiven for thinking she'd committed a felony rather than simply removed a strip of fabric. The outrage, however, isn't about the toplessness itself. If it were, the same critics would have called out Faith for bearing just as much at the same time. But they didn't. Faith's toplessness went unnoticed. Lala's, on the other hand, became a national emergency. So let's not pretend this is about modesty or propriety. It's about Lala. People are looking for any excuse to dislike her, and her chest just happened to be the most convenient scapegoat of the moment. Still, context does matter. Going topless on a beach, especially a top-optional one, is not the same as going topless at your boss's house during a professional photo shoot. The setting was Lisa Vanderpump's home, being used for a Sur calendar shoot. This wasn't a girl's getaway or a private swim with friends. It was a work event. And while Lala may have boosted morale for some, let's not pretend stripping at a work function isn't at best, wildly inappropriate. Try that in any other job and see if, "but I'm liberated," keeps you employed. Then there's the matter of consent. Not sexual consent, but social consideration. If you're in a group setting and you decide to dramatically shift the tone of the environment, say by removing your top, a quick, "Hey, is anyone uncomfortable with this?" is hardly an outrageous courtesy to offer. Instead, Lala acts first, gets defensive second, and blames the inevitable discomfort on everyone else's repression. When Katie later expressed that she wasn't okay with it, particularly given her absence and the ongoing tension between them, she was branded a prude. Because, naturally, if a woman doesn't want her partner around a topless frenemy, she must be insecure, anti-feminist, or tragically unliberated. Let's pause here. Katie's objection wasn't a puritanical crusade against female nudity. It was about trust and history. If you've had unresolved conflict with someone, and they take their top off in front of your boyfriend while you're not present, it's not prudish to raise an eyebrow. It's human. It's context. It's the social nuance that people like Lala pretend not to understand in the name of empowerment, when really, it's just about center stage. There's also the selective memory of the group to consider. Before Lala ever joined the show, Stassi and Kristen famously went topless in the ocean, with Scheana and her then-husband present, and not a whisper of protest followed. But when Lala does it, suddenly it's indecent. Apparently, toplessness is only scandalous when it comes from someone you already dislike. And yet, while Lala's approach is often tone-deaf and egocentric, the bigger issue remains the chronic hypocrisy of her castmates and critics. Women's bodies are consistently over-sexualized, and the rules of what's appropriate shift depending on who's doing the judging and who's being judged. If men can be shirtless without controversy, women should be afforded the same right without being branded as attention-seeking or inappropriate. But freedom doesn't negate basic awareness. If your brand of liberation routinely alienates the people around you, maybe it's not everyone else who needs to evolve. In the end, Lala's toplessness isn't the real problem. It's the double standards, the performative outrage, and the convenient weaponization of feminism only when it suits the narrative. Everyone in this saga could stand to be real, starting with Lala and certainly not ending with Katie. Brock Davies is what happens when red flags learn to talk. There's a unique talent required to bulldoze into a friend group, act like you've been there since day one, and still manage to raise every possible red flag within a matter of episodes. Enter Brock Davies, who in Vanderpump Rules Season 9 somehow manages to be both overfamiliar and wildly out of place at the same time. His attempt to engineer bro-bonding moments, like dragging the guys into an ice bucket as if they're lifelong pals reliving their frat days, lands with all the authenticity of a corporate trust fall. It's an awkward spectacle, dripping with desperation. While the rest of the group indulges his fast-tracked male bonding, James Kennedy, never exactly the moral compass of the show, ends up being the only one to call out the absurdity of Brock's premature favor-asking. When James is the voice of reason, it's time to reassess. Brock's personality doesn't just clash. It cannonballs into the group dynamic. He's one of those unnervingly self-assured people who acts like everyone else is late to his party. Add to that his relationship with Scheana, and things only get more unsettling. There's something off-kilter there. Yes, she's freshly postpartum during filming, which may explain some of her tolerance, but the dynamic is skewed, and not in a way that invites confidence. And then there's the inescapable, damning background. Brock left his children in Australia. He physically abused his first wife. He cheated on Scheana while she was pregnant. At what point does the benefit of the doubt expire? Whatever the excuse, age, growth, distance, reinvention, the math simply doesn't add up to redemption. A bad guy doesn't magically become a good one just because he's gotten better at PR. Even more galling, recent reports suggest his behavior hasn't improved much since the cameras stopped rolling. Rumors of inappropriate antics at BravoCon, because apparently cheating during pregnancy wasn't rock bottom, only further confirm that the leopard hasn't changed his patterned athleisure spots. As for the comparison to Mike Shay, ironically, despite his own battles with substance abuse, Shay comes out looking downright saintly next to Brock. At least Shay's issues were personal demons, not a rap sheet of abandonment, abuse, and betrayal. Brock isn't just a problematic cast member. He's a case study in how charisma, when paired with unchecked ego and a history of appalling behavior, becomes something far more disturbing than entertaining. Here's what no one wants to admit about Britney's wedding season. It wasn't about love. It was about power. Season 8, Episode 8 of Vanderpump Rules gifted viewers a moment of clarity, though not the kind the bride and groom might have hoped for. Lisa Vanderpump, grieving the death of her mother, tells Britney and Jax she won't be able to attend their wedding. The response? Britney offers condolences with all the sincerity of a hotel concierge offering a complimentary mint. Her face says it all. She's not mourning Lisa's loss. She's mourning the loss of one more opportunity to center herself in Lisa's orbit. Jax, shockingly, manages to appear more genuine in that moment. Not that it's a high bar, but given Britney's track record during her self-declared royal wedding season, even a flicker of emotional intelligence stands out. Her behavior throughout that period was less about celebration and more about coronation. The tiara may have been metaphorical, but the sense of entitlement was blindingly real. The jealousy was palpable long before the veil was lifted. Britney bristled when Stassi's engagement party was hosted at Lisa's estate, clearly unaccustomed to being out-princessed. That same pouty envy seemed to resurface again during Kristen's engagement over on the Valley. Patterns, as always, repeat. Of course, it wouldn't be a Jax and Britney storyline without a convenient veil of secrecy. Rumors swirled that the couple demanded a gag order on the cast regarding their pastor's controversial views, a subject conveniently dodged during filming. When Lisa, never one to be silenced, brought it up, Tom seized the moment and cracked it open on camera. Cue Jax, brimming with performative growth, reverting immediately to defensiveness. So much for transformation. And while we're revisiting Jax's alleged growth, what exactly has he accomplished since his infamous "I'm the #1 guy in the group" outburst circa Season 5? Nothing that time hasn't eroded. In contrast, Sandoval, his supposed rival, soared in popularity, success, and fan favor. Jax, eternally allergic to being eclipsed, did what he does best, retaliated with emotional pettiness disguised as wedding logistics. Stripping Tom of best man duties wasn't about friendship or forgiveness. It was about power, ego, and the last shred of control Jax could cling to. In short, the wedding may have featured a white dress and vows, but the prevailing theme was far from love. It was vanity, vendetta, and the desperate grasp for relevance in a world that was, slowly but surely, moving on. Calling Kristen borderline wasn't a diagnosis. It was a silencing tactic. Vanderpump Rules. Season 2 reunion, where accountability goes to die and pseudo-psychology thrives. Amid the chaos of betrayal, cheating, and emotional whiplash, one moment stands out like a neon sign at SUR, the casual accusation that Kristen Doute exhibits symptoms of borderline personality disorder. How clinical, how responsible, how utterly tone-deaf. Let's be clear, Kristen was in emotional freefall. Her long-term boyfriend, Tom Sandoval, was entangled with Ariana Madix before the corpse of their relationship had even cooled, and naturally, Kristen responded with volatility. But what she got in return wasn't compassion or even confrontation. It was a diagnosis. Apparently, emotional distress now warrants armchair psychiatry on national television. Kristen's behavior was undoubtedly erratic, self-destructive, intense, and often delivered with the subtlety of a jackhammer. But this idea that she must be mentally ill simply because she reacted explosively to a betrayal she suspected but wasn't allowed to confirm? That's not clinical insight. That's a cheap tactic to delegitimize her pain and absolve others of guilt. If Tom had the decency to end the relationship cleanly, rather than dragging Kristen through emotional purgatory, perhaps her spiral wouldn't have looked quite so dramatic. And the irony? If we're handing out behavioral comparisons to actual borderline traits, emotional splitting, sudden shifts in demeanor, childlike affect during breakdowns, it's Ariana who occasionally embodies those markers more than Kristen ever did. One could point to moments like Ariana's meltdown at Tom Tom, complete with a babyish tone and visible dissociation, and find familiar patterns. But unlike Kristen, Ariana is shrouded in a halo of stoicism and intelligence, so her emotional moments are framed as deep rather than disturbed. In truth, Kristen's greatest crime was poor delivery. Her words often crashed into walls before they reached the listener, but that doesn't make her wrong. Her suspicions about Tom and Ariana were, in the end, vindicated. The emotional messiness was real, but so was the betrayal. There's a difference between being wrong and being made to look crazy. And in the VPR universe, nothing hides guilt better than painting your accuser as unstable.